Welcome, Army fans. This is Joe Iacono with GoBlackKnights.com. As part of our continuing Army-Navy Week coverage, we have the privilege of hosting another special guest, brother of head coach Jeff Monken, Tom Monken. Tom, how you doing today? How's the trip up to the Boston area been for you?
Doing fantastic, and first time in Boston, so enjoying it and going and seeing all the sights. And the one thing you got to do when you're here is eat a lobster roll. So I took care of that yesterday, and probably do that again today.
Absolutely. My wife was planning out the menu for today and all the stops and dining tour, and I'm just hoping I don't gain 20 pounds while I'm up here. So, so Tom, want to start off just talking a lot about your family, obviously, right? Coach Monken has made the point on many different occasions how you really come from a whole family of coaches. And I had a father who coached for 40 years, a number of different sports, football, wrestling, baseball, girls softball, a little bit of everything. And so I can relate to that a little bit, but you guys, you must have got together and every conversation probably was around football or talk about kind of, maybe you have to mention every single coach in the family, but kind of, I know a lot of it stems from your dad, Michael, kind of go through a lot of the different coaches in your family. Clearly the most famous is probably Todd with the Baltimore Ravens, your cousin, but kind of go through that list and talk a little bit about what it was like as a kid growing up in that environment.
Sure. Well, my oldest uncle was Jim, but St. Louis, Illinois, and my uncle Glenn was down in the St. Louis area, and Uncle Bob was in the Chicago area, Lake High School, and then my dad was in Joliet, and then Uncle Bill was in Charleston, Illinois. So, there's five brothers, and my Aunt Julie, oddly enough, her husband was a longtime high school referee. So he could always step in, and he knew as much football as the coaches, I think. But it was all started with those guys, and then it trickled down to the next generation. And my cousin Tony was a longtime high school coach in Chicagoland area, and then his brother Todd, he's been in the college ranks and now in the pros. Their younger brother Ted, longtime coach in Chicago area football. Right now, he's a badminton coach of all things. But
wow, that's cool.
He said it's an easy sport to coach, and the girls are really good. So he said I don't have to do much. But and then I've got a cousin Matt who's well, right now he's coaching football and also does girls golf in the spring. So, and then I was a high school coach for 23 years as well. And then my other cousins I've got a cousin Jane that's the athletic director at a big high school in Champaign, Illinois, and she's coached basketball and track. And everybody else has kind of dipped their toes into it and youth sports and all. But there's a bunch of us in the second generation that are they're high school, and Jeff in college, and Todd in the college and pros. But we kind of carried that tradition on. And I was joking with somebody just the other day. I said I didn't realize that as a kid growing up at Thanksgiving, Christmas, family get-togethers, I didn't realize everybody else didn't just talk football all the time. And Thanksgiving weekend for the Monken family was always going to Bloomington, Illinois, to watch the state championships, and I thought that's what everybody did.
Yep.
I didn't realize we were probably the oddballs in it, but it worked out.
Yeah, no, I can totally relate. When I was a little kid growing up in New Jersey, my dad used to take me, if he didn't have a game that day, which a lot of the high schools in New Jersey would play on Thanksgiving morning. If he didn't have a game that day, he'd take me to the big rivalry, Easton and Peaburg out there in Eastern Pennsylvania, which had been like one of the oldest rivalries in the country. And then we'd come back and do Thanksgiving afterwards. So I can totally relate with that. And then he'd always start, if they weren't in the state playoffs, he'd always start wrestling practice the very next day. So it was funny when I was in high school, I'd eat all this food on Thanksgiving, and then he'd be like, go downstairs and get on the bike because you need to start getting ready.
Start cutting weight.
Exactly. So very cool. And so talk a little bit about, kind of what you've been doing lately. You're at a lot of the Army games and practices and everything, and kind of what your role is really with Coach Monken and with the team, kind of informally, and I see the family everywhere. Every time I'm in the press box, I see your mom Nancy and I see Beth and the girls, and talk a little bit about kind of what that's been like. And I really think the culture, just like Jeff's great at building culture on the Army team, I think the culture he's built with the family is amazing as well.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a reason coaches like to work for him, is because family's always been important, always will be important, and he allows his coaches to be home, and have dinner with their families at 6 o'clock at night or 5:30, whenever
Wow, that's
the
great.
meetings end. And I had a guy ask me about that, just how's Jeff keep his coaches around, and he said he's got some guys that've been with him for years. I said it's because he allows them to be a dad and a husband, and I said that's a critical part of, I think, of their success, is just simply allowing those guys to have the luxury and freedom of not just being a coach 24/7. And I think that stems from growing up. We always ate supper as a family. Didn't matter if it was 9 o'clock at night and I had a ball game, or Jeff had something, or Susan had something. It didn't matter. We always ate supper as a family. And I remember my dad was a driver's ed teacher, like most high school coaches. I think that falls into it. They're PE football coaches and driver's ed teachers. At least it was in our family.
Yep.
But
I can completely relate with that. Yep.
yeah, but he would be on. He'd have kids out driving, doing their driving lessons, and he would oftentimes stop and come inside, and they'd come in with him, and they'd eat supper with us. And I still remember there was a girl that said, we all prayed, started eating, talking about our day, and she just sat there staring at us. And finally, my dad says, "Is everything okay?" And she said, "I've never done this with my family."
Oh man.
And I thought, it's one of those things
You're
that
not
goes
going to
back.
make me cry on this interview, Tom. Not going to happen. But
But
that's awesome.
it's just she marveled at it, and she even said, "Do you guys do this every night?" And we're all like, "Yeah, that's just the way we've always been." And
Yeah.
I think that carries over. Jeff, he's getting the girls up in the morning, and seeing them off to school and having supper with them, and it's just, I think that's just an important part of who he is, and how my parents raised us.
Very cool. Yeah, I read in a book recently. I mean, the number one thing you can do for your family is have dinner together every night and talk
Yep.
about the day and that kind of stuff. So that's just great to see. Good stuff. So kind of turn into this year's football season, right? It's been kind of interesting. Right. It started probably not the way any of us wanted it to start, certainly not the Monken family. But all of a sudden, November 1st rolled around, the calendar changed, and it's like a completely different team. Can you kind of give us an insider's look a little bit into kind of, how the season's gone for Coach, and kind of, some of his thoughts, and how the team was really able to turn it around at Air Force, and they've just kept the momentum going?
Yeah, I think, it's no secret, I guess. You switch offenses, you can practice it all you want, you can do the reps in camp, but until you are having to execute that against an opposing team, there's going to be hiccups when you finally suit up and you're really playing for 60 minutes. And I think even though you get a positive game here and there, if there's still pieces that are trying to move together, and guys that are trying to gel and figure out their role, where they've maybe had a different role over the last 3 years. And so all of a sudden their role in the offense, or even in practice, has changed. And I think that filters through the entire team. And it's, there's a confidence thing of when you run the same offense for 3 years, it's just muscle memory. You know exactly what to do in every situation. And even though it's still football, you change up offenses, your scheme's a little bit different, your steps are different. So, there were some hiccups, and I know, Jeff was not, pleased with that. And he is a perfectionist, always has been. And, so he was disappointed just in the fact, I think, that the team struggled, and he knew they were better than what they were playing. And I think finally, like you said, you hit that Air Force game and everything, just clicked. And sometimes that happens with a team where they're just up and down like a roller coaster. And then all of a sudden something triggers it. And, a nice rivalry game against a team we don't really like a whole bunch. And as Army fans, that's a perfect time to really turn the switch on and play your best football. And just like with that, it all of a sudden builds confidence, and you feed off of that. And you look at that Coastal Carolina game, it looked like that Coastal team just was shell shocked. They didn't even know what hit them. And it was just a matter of Army came out. They were aggressive. They were confident. And, I think that just feeds on all facets of the team. And, I think that just was a great trigger game. And then it's carried over, and hopefully tomorrow it carries over even more. And I guess it'll be at about 36 hours or so. We'll be singing second. And that's the whole goal.
Absolutely. I think you bring up a couple of really good points there, Tom, for the viewing audience, quote unquote. You know, I don't know if you agree. I'm sure you do agree with this because you kind of said it. Everybody wanted to diss the new offense, and I'm like, it's not the new. It's do anything new for the first time. I mean, I remember when Army first switched from back under when they went from Bobby Ross to Rich Ellerson, and they switched from or Stan Brock, they switched from like an I formation, pro set, traditional to the triple option for the first time. That was a struggle. And you're doing it with players who weren't necessarily recruited to run that offense. I live down in the Atlanta area and follow Georgia Tech a lot, which I know is a school near and dear to your family's heart. And when Paul Johnson retired and Jeff Collins came in, he's trying to run a spread offense with triple option kids. And I think their second or third game of the season, they got beat by the Citadel. So it's just when you make a transition, I don't care what offense you're running, it's probably pretty difficult for the players and staff until they get out there and get game reps. And like you said, I mean, there were flashes of brilliance. I think UTSA showed us what the offense could look like. But then the other thing you got to take into account too, I think, is I was thinking about this morning, actually. You look at kind of when the offense was really struggling in that stretch in October through Troy and LSU, obviously, and even on to UMass. Bryson Daly was not available for all those games, and you had a true freshman quarterback in Champ Harris. Talk a little bit to that maybe for the fan base, and how going from a junior quarterback who's got all the reps with the first team to a true freshman who was playing at St. Thomas Aquinas a year ago, what the difference is in the offense there.
Yeah, and that's that poor. I mean, I say poor kid because his first college starts against LSU. I mean, a night game in Baton Rouge. I mean, that's just what a way.
Worst case scenario.
You live for those games, but boy, that's not the way you want to start off your career against a monster of a team. But the confidence you've got in an older kid, I think that kids get that, players get that Daly's been around. He's put in time. They know what he can do, and I think no matter how talented a kid is coming in, a successful high school kid is going to end up hopefully being a successful college kid. But there's growing pains and there's a learning curve there. No matter, I mean, you look at the Manning kid that's at Texas. He was the number one quarterback recruit, and he's struggling. And that's the way it is. I mean, every player in college is bigger and faster than the ones you played against in high school.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that was a probably a big challenge for him and a big challenge for the team, is that when you've played with one kid for 5 games, 6 games, and you kind of know what he brings to the table, and then all of a sudden you've got a new kid coming in who's going to struggle because he's young, he's got lacks the experience, and it's just there. It's once again it's kind of like, I mean, I played quarterback in college, and when I came in and I became the starter, I was a different quarterback than the one before me. We ran the same offense, but what I could do in the offense and what we did and how they called plays was completely different from he was my roommate and best friend, but he ran a different style of our offense, even though it was the same offense, same playbook. Our offense coordinator had to call things differently because I did things differently that my friend Brad couldn't do, and he could do. They'd call things for him because the things he could do, I didn't do well. So it was just, and I think that was the issue with that. When you all of a sudden you transition to a new quarterback, it's the same offense, but it's completely different because the kid running the ship, he's different, and he has different talents and strengths, and so it's going to take for the coordinators and the coaches to figure out what can we do effectively with this kid and call it accordingly and have success in the game.
Absolutely. And right, all good coaches are going to tailor their offense to meet the skills of their players, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
let's hover over something you talked about there, and I want to hit on recruiting a little bit. I think you said usually good high school players, especially at good programs, will translate into good college players. And kind of what we've noticed with Coach Monken over the 10 years he's been at West Point is he recruits a lot of kids from really good high school football programs. I live down in Beaufort, Georgia, and he's got a couple Beaufort high school kids on the team. He's done that. Obviously, Harris was at St. Thomas Aquinas, which is a great high school program. He also has a history of recruiting a lot of quarterbacks and linebackers because they're great athletes and they can transition. You look at Shane Buckingham and how he was a quarterback down in Gwinnett County, and now he's this massive offensive lineman.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit to that recruiting philosophy, because I really like that kind of.
Yeah, and I think it's probably going after quarterbacks and especially middle linebackers. They're the leaders of the team. And so at a place like West Point, you've got to have good leadership, and you have to have kids that are willing to sacrifice team for their own success and their own goals. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. They really hit those kind of kids just simply because they're going to be good teammates. They're going to be good kids to coach, and they're going to be willing to move positions. I mean, that's the the reality of it is that not everybody's going to end up playing quarterback. So is this kid talented enough, physical enough, and can we mold him into a different position? Not always going to be an offensive lineman. I mean, that's a little bit of an extreme, but that's I think the big thing. And Jeff's done that since. I mean, he was at Georgia Southern. They'd recruit the heck out of good athletes and good players simply because they knew they could mold them into something different. And you got to find those pieces to fit and to make it work. And place like Army, it's a little harder and challenging to recruit and find those kids. But I think that's probably why they do go after those athletic kids that are leaders, just simply because they've got to be able to find the right fit and sometimes create a great player in a new position that they probably didn't plan on playing in college. But I think it goes back to the kind of kids that they recruit at Army and the philosophy that Jeff's always said it. It's one of those service above self things, and he preaches it and believes it, and those are the kind of kids you're going to get on your team, and they know it when they step on campus that's the way it's got to be. And it's putting the team and the guy next to you up above you, so the success is for everyone.
So staying kind of on recruiting, it comes up in almost every interview I do, especially when I'm on other rival sites like LSU and some of the bigger schools. Recruiting at an academy in today's college football climate with NIL, transfer portal, right? It's in the news every single day. Oh, this school just paid this kid $10 million. I mean, who knows what's coming down the road? I was just watching last night that John Rahm transferred to LIV Golf for $565 million, I think was the contract. And if the Saudis get involved, I mean, who knows what college sports is going to look like down the road, right? So what's it like? You're in there. You get to talk to Coach Monken all the time. what's it like trying to recruit in today's college football climate at an academy?
Yeah, that's the it's a never ending battle simply because that pool of high school players. I mean, he's always said it's a pyramid, and you've got all these hundreds and hundreds and thousands of kids that play, and are they good enough to play in college? So that is the next level up, and it keeps narrowing, and all of a sudden you've got a little peak, a little point at the top of that pyramid. Those are the kids that could go to the academies. They've got the test scores, they've got the grades, they've got the leaders, all that stuff, and it's one thing to get kids when it was a level playing field and everybody was just recruiting. But now all of a sudden, when I'm driving around, I live about an hour from Bloomington, Indiana, and when I'm driving through there on for work, and you see kids up on billboards, for car dealerships and stores, and IU is not an Alabama or a Penn State, Ohio
Right.
State, so they're getting plenty of cash flow coming into kids, and it's not a level playing field. And I know, I mean, I know Jeff probably doesn't speak completely I wouldn't say truthfully, but he can't really open up
Right.
about that.
There's press conference
there,
answers, and then there's the answers I get when I talk to him in a longer interview. I get it.
Yeah, but the reality is you're not recruiting the same kids anymore. I mean, kids are looking for the best deal, and with the transfer portal, I mean, if you don't like where you're playing, you're not getting enough playing time, or all of a sudden you're talking to another kid at another school, and they say, hey, you know what, you can get 300 grand if you show up here. I mean, how can you tell a 19-year-old kid, hey, don't take the 300,000, stay here, and we'll give you a moped or something.
Right.
It's just, it's turned into a free agency, and I'm not sure it's a good thing for college sports, but it's one of those that nobody asked my opinion, and
right.
I have a hard time. I mean, when I played, in the '90s, and when I played, and you wanted to transfer up, you had to sit out a year. If you transferred down, you could play right away. So there was no transferring, for FBS to FBS. It was, if you wanted to drop down to FCS, you could play right away. And I think it wasn't the ideal, I guess, setup, but I liked it a whole lot more than now, when you can have kids playing 5-6 years and they could be at a fifth school. I mean, in 5 years. I mean, that to me tells you one thing: kid's not there for the education.
No,
he's only there to play college football.
Athlete term is kind of a misnomer.
It's a misnomer now. It really is.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and I'm not here to lament that. I think they've got to get it. They got to get it under control somehow. I mean, obviously, like, you're dealing with the service academies. It's 3 schools that can't take advantage of this stuff. So the NCAA is not going to make a decision based on 3 schools. I get it. But it's just super unfortunate. It's like, okay, I'm not saying maybe you shouldn't pay players, but there's maybe regulated a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, there's got to be there's got to be some set rules, because if not, it becomes the Wild West, and it's just whoever can find the deepest pockets. And
exactly.
Yeah.
So talk about, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit in an earlier answer. A lot of us old grads and Army fans are just amazed with how well Coach Monken gets it. And what I mean by that is understands the mission and purpose of West Point and really fits football into that. He does it better. I graduated from West Point in the early 90s. He does it better. Jim Young was really good at it. Bob Sutton was really good at it, but he does it better than anyone I've ever seen. And I was talking to Tina Servasio at CBS the other night, and she says a lot of them are amazed that he wasn't a grad because he understands it so well. I know he coached at the other academy in Maryland for a little while, so that may have helped him. But what do you think is it about Jeff in particular that allows him to really understand what we're trying to accomplish? And not only what we're trying to accomplish as an academy, but how he can fit football into that mission and use it not as a negative for kids he's recruiting, but as a positive. I mean, the amount of football kids that branch infantry and fielder. I mean, Marquell Broughton, if he wants to be, can be chief of staff of the Army someday.
Yeah.
Right. So how does he do that so well?
I really think it went back to where service above self. He That's just the way he is, and I think, like you said, he gets it. And I've got a good friend, Jeff Maliska, who's a '94 grad, and he was 2 years behind me in high school, and we talk all the time. But he says that same thing that you said. Jeff gets it, and I think when it comes down to it, you're going to have an Andre Carter here and there that can go to the NFL. But the reality is these kids are going to go through 4 years at West Point. They're going to go out and lead soldiers, and field of battle. And Jeff, my grandfather was in the Navy in World War II. Got uncles who served in the Army and Marines. So, not that to play the patriotism thing, but we've always valued our freedoms. We've always been a very, proud family of our country, and Jeff is no different. I mean, and this will be, he probably if he sees this or somebody tells him, he's probably going to punch me. But when we were little kids and the national anthem would come on during a game, he'd tell everybody in the room to stop and stand up and put their hand on their heart.
Oh my gosh.
That's
he was a cadet before when he was a little kid. That's great.
Yeah. And that's just the way he was. And I think that's where he always talks about West Point being the #1 leadership academy in the world. And that's he wants to bring in kids that are going to carry that mission and go out and serve in the military and serve their families and their wives and their children as leaders. And that's where leadership doesn't depend on the military side of things. He wants them to be men of character and lead their families, because their military career is going to end, their football career is going to end, but the legacy that you leave with the people that are within the walls of your house, that's the important one. And I think that's where Jeff's mission is getting kids to I guess be leaders, and it's not just about football, it's not just about military, it's about being men of character and being leaders for their home, because that's the most important mission you got.
Good stuff. So turning the page to this weekend's game, Tom, obviously you've been around Coach Monken, been around the team. How's the energy level been in practice? You've seen enough of these games. Health plays a big part of it, obviously. What's kind of the overall vibe or feeling around the team right now? Do you think their headspace is right? Do you think
I got to peek around the corner and make sure nobody's here in earshot, but yeah, I'm clear. So that's I don't want to have any fans or anybody, but it's funny. I was out at the Air Force game, and I think it was 2017, and we shut them out there in Colorado Springs. I surprised Jeff flew out there. I got there on, I think it was Thursday or Friday, whatever it was, but I walked out of the practice. They were doing their walkthrough, and I just tapped him on the shoulder. I said, "Hey, can I get a ticket for tomorrow's game?" But I kind of always go back to that game because there was a kind of that quiet confidence, and not kids walking around with a little swagger, but it wasn't a cockiness. It was just confidence of, what, we're going to line up and we're going to hit you in the mouth and we're going to get up and we're going to do it again and again. And I kind of get that vibe just walking around the hotel and being around the kids, that there's some quiet confidence, just filtering through. And I think that's a great way to be. You don't have to talk about it. You can just tell there's just an edge that, we're going to go out and take care of business.
Good stuff. Last question before I let you go, Tom. And got to give props to your mom, Nancy, and your dad on this one. But, Charles and I, and even when I was talking to Tina the other night on CBS, we're really impressed with how polite and gracious and graceful your brother is with the media. It's right. It's not always easy. My dad was a coach. I get it. And he gets some crazy questions sometimes. Like completely understood. And there's certain college coaches who they're great at football, but they're really not awesome human beings. I don't know how else to say it. Tina was telling me the other night about this time, her and Ross, and I think it was either Ben or Jason were up there, and it was a huge rainstorm, and they weren't going to be able to get back down to the Thayer, and Coach Monken got him a van and brought it over and got him umbrellas and had one of the grad assistants drive them down to the hotel. Talk about where that mindset comes from and kind of how your family was raised and why you guys kind of treat people so well.
Well, it's I say this from experience because my mom would remind me of this as a kid. It's sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I always I think it was Winston Churchill said the definition of tact is being able to tell somebody to go to hell and they're looking forward to the journey. And not that Jeff.
I haven't heard that one. I'm
Jeff
using
gets some
that.
questions.
I like that.
But I laugh at some of the questions he'll get sometimes, and I know in his brain he's like, "Oh my gosh!" But he just you have to kind of pause and somebody's just trying to ask a question to get some a sound bite or a little bit of information. And I think it's one of those things we just always we're told to kill people with kindness, and one of those if you don't have something nice to say, then don't say it. So you just have to hit the pause button and be gracious. And I guess a spoonful of grace goes a long way, and especially like you said in the media when you probably want to just say, I don't want to answer that question, and what the heck kind of question is that? You just hit that pause button and give a nice answer. You may not want to answer the question, but you know what? They're doing their job. Jeff's doing his job, and I think he understands that. And it's nothing personal. It's nothing. They're not trying to make a dig at him. It's just they're just trying to do their job, and so he in turn has to treat them with respect. And it's my dad was that way. It was you treat the janitor of the building with the same respect you do the president of the company that's running it.
Absolutely. Hey, Tom, thanks a lot for your time. I know you got a busy week, so we really appreciate you stopping by. Army fans, once again, this has been Joe Iacono with GoBlackKnights.com along with Tom Monken. Go Army, beat Navy.